unbelievers and created a political philosophy that justified murdering fellow Muslims, including their innocent wives and children. But the Prophet's Islam and the Prophet's son-in-law and cousin, Ali ibn Abi Talib, had to fight this group militarily in order to protect Islam. Ultimately, they assassinated him. But very simply, Tim, this is the outline of the battle that currently is waged within the Muslim Ummah. The battle between the Islam of the Prophet Muhammad, the battle of the Islam of the Salaf al-Salih, and the Islam of the 21st century Khourijis who have waged terrorism and under the veneer of Islam.
Imam, thank you very much indeed. You do not believe that the West is waging a war against Islam?
Not at all. I don't believe that the war is waged against Islam as a religion. Islam as a religion, as you pointed out, is based upon the 5 fundamental acts of worship. When the Prophet was asked, what is Islam by Gabriel in the hadith that we Muslims all know, he was told it is the belief in God, the practice of prayer, giving charity, fasting the month of Ramadan, going to Hajj in some versions of this hadith. There's no war against this in the West.
What are Muslims then to make of the discrimination that they've suffered, kind of racial profiling, for instance, in the United States? What are they to make of that?
Well, that is certainly one of the things we have to combat because, as you very well pointed out, Tim, you quoted the end editor of the newspaper who said the majority of terrorism is done today by Muslims. And therefore, there is a perception, and we have to delink the notion of terrorism done by Muslims from the vast majority of Muslims in both the Muslim world and in the West who are practicing their faith, who are protected, and who are embraced within Western society.
Imam, thank you very much indeed. Grand Mufti, may I ask you to speak for the motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel like an old sheikh that used to ask his audience, do you know what I'm going to tell you? They would say no, because they don't know. And then said, if you don't know, it is useless to talk to you anyway. So the next day they said half of them will say, we know, and the half of them will say no, to see what the sheikh will say. And they said it, and then he said that the half that knows should inform the half that doesn't know. And the third day, the sheikh said, do you know what I'm going to talk to you? They said, yes. And he said, if you know what I'm going to tell you, then there is no need to speak to you. I have no now way to escape, Tim, from talking to you about very sensitive and very important issues of today regarding where is the Islam and whether Islam is attacked or whether it is a war against Islam after it was war against terror. I don't believe that anyone can fight Islam and can win against Islam. But I do believe that the context in which we have the war against terror is implied the war against those who said that they were acting on behalf of Muslims, committing certain terrorist attacks in New York, Washington, then Madrid, 2004, and in Holland, 2004 in November. I'll give you one fact. First, today Muslims make up almost 1.5 billion of the world population, but have no permanent chair in the Security Council of the United Nations. Is it necessary that one be an enemy to the West so to become a permanent member of the Security Council, like in the case of the former Soviet Union and China? The fact too, not being permanent members of the Security Council of the UN, Muslims have no veto power over the issue of war and peace in the world, but still they are accused to be the cause for world conflicts from Palestine to Chechnya and from Kashmir to Darfur. Who is then responsible for the war and peace in the world? Those who have the power to win the peace or those who have no power to start the war? The fact three, out of the world refugees today, 70% are Muslims. How is it then that we are faced with a logic that says, although not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists are Muslims, including those refugees who are asking to be free to go back home? Finally, coming to Bosnia, you know that Ceric is a Christian, Orthodox Christian. on the 10th of the anniversary of the genocide in Srebrenica, Karadzic is free. And the Chief Army General Rasim Delic, that was fighting for survival in Bosnia, is in The Hague. And you tell me who is fighting whom and who is against whom. Thank you very much.
Grand Mufti, thank you very much indeed. You talked about your own home ground in Bosnia. Was it a war on Islam for the West to bomb the Serbs after they had been massacring Muslims? Was that evidence of a war against Islam?
No, that was against the Serbs, and thank you very much
for
asking
then.
me, and I use the opportunity to thank the American people whose sons are still in Bosnia-Herzegovina and making me possible to live in Bosnia-Herzegovina peacefully, and I wish that they will stay.
So one moment it's a war against Islam, and the next moment it's not.
There is another phase. There is a phase of that story, which means that the intervention came after 4 years of the concentration camps of the Auschwitz of Sarajevo and after the massacre and genocide in Srebrenica. It came, but it was too late.
Isn't it true that hatred has been preached, I put this to you as Grand Mufti, from too many Islamic pulpits, by too many Islamic clergy?
I would not say too many, but there are some people who are frustrated, who are unhappy, and who don't know how to express
It's more than that.
their
It's
hunger.
hatred that has been preached, isn't it?
Excuse me?
It is hatred that has been preached.
Yes, there
Otherwise,
are
why
some
did the
people.
Saudi authorities feel the need to sack so many
I don't
imams?
want to justify the hatred of some Muslims by saying that we hear the hatred from the Christians and Jews. I think that we have to stop hatred from all sides.
Grand Mufti, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to throw the questions open to the audience in a little while, but first let me ask Ramzi Khoury to speak against the motion.
Well, Tim, I am against the motion because this war is all about oil. This war is all about furthering the interests of Israel, whether they may be security interests or geopolitical interests. This war is about expanding the American military presence in this region. To say or to suggest that the war on terror has become a war on Islam is to say that American foreign policy in the region has changed. There is absolutely no proof of such change. American foreign policy has always been steadily a policy of double standards when it came to Israel, a policy of I am the power and you are the underdog. This is American foreign policy. Nothing has changed. But the war on terror that started.
Are you speaking for the motion or against the motion?
There is no war.
The
war on terror, Tim. No, absolutely not. I am all against the idea that the war on terror has become a war on Islam. The war on terror may have become a war on Iraq that is unfair. It may have started with good merit, going after Osama bin Laden and those people who committed 9/11, who chopped people's head on television, those people who ruined the name of Islam, is a war that is being conducted today by Muslim nations. It is not an American war against terror. It's an international, multinational, multi-faith war against terror. This is what is going on. This is not a war against Islam. There are many problems with America. There is a huge problem with American foreign policy, Tim, and most importantly is how the neoconservatives are running this administration in Washington, D.C. And let us take a look at their doctrine. Their doctrine is not a doctrine of religion. They have absolutely nothing against Islamists. For the first time ever in history, these neoconservatives have put their hands with what is unheard of. The Islamist Shiites in Iraq. It's never happened before. This is a godless war.
Ramzi Khoury, thank you very much indeed. You say it's a godless war, but can you understand why Muslims are particularly angry that the Palestinians have been left to rot in refugee camps decade after decade while the West bangs on about protecting its freedoms and values?
Of course I can understand why the Palestinians are angry.
That's not a war against Islam?
No, that's a war against Palestinian independence. The American administration has always
That's not the view shared by many Muslims around the world, is it? Your view is not shared by many Muslims.
I'm a Palestinian Christian sitting here. I have suffered because of Israeli occupation. I have relatives who are paying a major price in Palestine. Some of them have died and have been killed by Israel. Shall we say today and declare today that Israel is the enemy of Christianity? This is a war against Christianity.
But I'm talking about the attitude of the West. Take Chechnya, for instance, the blind eye that the West has turned to the human rights violations carried out by Russian